The crystalline spires of the Galactic Concordat's headquarters pierced the violet sky of Centauri Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Inside, Nova Blackwood adjusted her pristine blue uniform, her dark eyes fixed on the ornate doors of the High Council chamber. After 15 years in the Terran Diplomatic Corps, she never imagined she'd be assigned to what amounted to glorified babysitting duty. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the circular chamber where 12 representatives from different star systems sat in tiered rows. In the center stood a figure that made Nova's breath catch, an Australian, her silver-toned skin seeming to capture and reflect the chamber's ambient light. What struck Nova most wasn't the alien's otherworldly beauty, but the defiant set of her shoulders despite the energy restraints binding her wrists. Officer Blackwood, first speaker Thorne's resonant voice filled the chamber. Step forward. Nova complied, her boots silent on the polished floor. You understand the gravity of your assignment? Yes, first speaker. I am to serve as guardian and liaison for Lyra Starweaver during her exile on Earth. The Australian, Lyra, turned slightly, her iridescent eyes meeting Nova's with an unreadable expression. The first speaker continued, Lyra Starweaver stands convicted of spreading unauthorized information about the Concordat's internal affairs to developing worlds. Rather than standard imprisonment, the Council has deemed exile to Earth more fitting. Nova understood the unspoken message. Earth, despite its recent inclusion in galactic affairs, was still viewed as a backwater by many species. Sending an Australian there was both punishment and pointed message. Furthermore, Thorne added, you will ensure she adheres to the terms of her exile. No unauthorized communications, no leaving the designated zone without permission, and absolutely no contact with her former associates. Lyra's voice, when she spoke, carried the musical quality characteristic of her species. How generous of the Council to assign me a personal jailer. Nova kept her expression neutral, though something in Lyra's tone, more weariness than bitterness, caught her attention. The next hours passed in a blur of protocols and procedures. Before long, they were aboard Nova's ship, the Stellar Wind, breaking atmosphere and setting course for Earth. In the ship's common area, Nova studied her charge as she removed the energy restraints. Lyra immediately moved to the viewport, pressing one elegant hand against the transparent material as she watched Centauri Prime recede. You're not what I expected, Nova found herself saying. Lyra turned, a faint smile playing at her lips. An infamous dissident? A dangerous radical? A criminal, Nova replied honestly. Your file suggests someone far more aggressive. Perhaps your file needs updating. Lyra's gaze returned to the stars. Or perhaps the line between criminal and revolutionary depends entirely on who's drawing it. Nova frowned. You violated multiple treaties by sharing restricted information. I shared the truth, Lyra interrupted softly. About trade agreements that were crushing developing worlds, about species being denied aid because they lacked strategic value. She turned back to Nova. Tell me, Officer Blackwood, is Earth truly as independent in its dealings with the Concordat as your people believe? The question struck uncomfortably close to doubts Nova had harbored but never voiced. She straightened, falling back on protocol. My personal opinions aren't relevant to my assignment. You should rest, we have a long journey ahead. As Nova made her way to the bridge, she couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment would test more than just her diplomatic skills. Behind her, Lyra's quiet voice followed, they're always relevant, Nova. That's precisely why I'm here. The Stellar Wind continued its journey toward Earth, carrying its 2 passengers, each bound by duty and principles, neither fully aware of how their unlikely pairing would soon reshape the very foundations of galactic society. Earth's skyline had changed dramatically in the decades since first contact, gleaming towers now interspersed with gravity-defying architecture inspired by alien designs. Nova guided her ground transport through Seattle's rain-slick streets, stealing glances at her passenger. Lyra sat perfectly still, her silver skin seeming to pulse with its own inner light as she took in the urban landscape. "This will be your residence," Nova announced, pulling up to a modern apartment complex in the diplomatic quarter. "The entire building is monitored, but you'll have relative freedom within its boundaries." Lyra's iridescent eyes narrowed slightly. "How generous. Tell me, do all Earth's diplomatic guests receive such careful surveillance?" "Only the ones convicted of galactic crimes," Nova replied dryly, leading the way inside. The apartment was spacious by Earth standards, though probably modest compared to Australian accommodations. "You'll find everything you need here. The AI system will help you adjust to Earth customs and report my every movement." Lyra finished, running her fingers along a shelf. "You know, on my world, we have a saying, trust grows best in open light." Nova felt a familiar flicker of irritation mixed with something else, curiosity, perhaps. "Trust is earned, Miss Starweaver. Especially after what you did." "What I did," Lyra turned, her expression intense, "was expose corruption that's destroying worlds. Your world could be next, Nova. The Concordat's protection comes with a price that A sharp knock interrupted them. Nova opened the door to find Director Harrison, her superior at the Terran Diplomatic Corps, looking grave. "Officer Blackwood, a word." In the hallway, Harrison's weathered face creased with concern. "We've intercepted communications suggesting Lyra's supporters might attempt a rescue operation. Until further notice, you're to remain here as her full-time guardian." Nova's protest died on her lips as alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Emergency shutters slammed down over windows as Harrison's comm unit crackled to life. "Unauthorized vessel approaching. All units dash." The rest was lost in a deafening explosion that rocked the building's foundation. Nova instinctively dove back into the apartment, tackling Lyra to the ground as the ceiling above them cracked. Through the chaos, she glimpsed sleek figures in stealth suits rappelling past the broken windows. "Your friends have interesting timing," Nova grunted, drawing her pulse pistol. To her surprise, Lyra looked genuinely alarmed. "They're not my friends." She grabbed Nova's arm, her skin pulsing with urgent light patterns. "Those are Shadowclaw operatives, Concordat Black Ops. They're here to silence me permanently." Nova's training kicked in as she processed this information. If Lyra was telling the truth, this was far bigger than a simple information leak. If she was lying. "Why should I believe you?" "Because," Lyra's eyes met hers, "I could have escaped during the explosion. I chose to warn you instead." The sound of boots in the hallway forced Nova's decision. "Security override Nova 7 Delta," she commanded. A hidden panel slid open in the wall. "In. Now." They barely made it into the panic room before the apartment door burst open. Through the hidden cameras, Nova watched as masked figures swept the rooms with military precision. Their weapons were definitely not standard issue. "Those are phase disruptors," Lyra whispered. "Illegal in civilized space. They don't leave bodies behind." Nova's mind raced. If these were really Concordat operatives, her entire understanding of this assignment had just shifted. But why risk an operation on Earth? Unless. "What exactly did you discover, Lyra?" In the dim light of the panic room, Lyra's skin dimmed to a soft glow. "Evidence that the Concordat is deliberately destabilizing emerging worlds, creating crises they can solve in exchange for resources and influence. Earth's recent economic challenges. Not as natural as they seem." Outside, the intruders were setting up what looked like scanning equipment. They'd find the panic room soon. Nova made her decision, activating her emergency beacon. "If you're lying to me." "I'm not." Lyra's hand found hers in the darkness. "Earth needs to know the truth. All worlds do. Help me prove it, and I'll turn myself in to your authorities afterward." "You have my word." Nova looked at their joined hands, human and Australian, jailer and prisoner, both possibly on the verge of becoming fugitives from the galaxy's most powerful organization. Your word better be worth something where you come from. A faint smile touched Lyra's lips. Among my people, it's worth everything. As the scanner's hum grew louder and backup sirens wailed in the distance, Nova realized she was about to find out exactly how much an Australian's word was worth, assuming they lived long enough for it to matter. The maintenance tunnels beneath Seattle's diplomatic quarter were never meant to accommodate a human and an Australian running for their lives. Nova led the way, her tactical flashlight illuminating the curved walls as distant explosions rumbled above them. Lyra kept pace effortlessly, her natural bioluminescence casting shifting patterns across the metal surfaces. Your Earth security forces are surprisingly efficient, Lyra observed as they paused at an intersection. The Shadowclaw team seemed unprepared for the resistance. Nova checked her wrist display, tracking the emergency channels. That's because we've had protocols in place for exactly this scenario since first contact. Though, she added with a pointed look at her companion, we expected the threat to come from outside the Concordat, not within it. Before Lyra could respond, Nova's display crackled to life. Director Harrison's voice came through, strained but clear. Blackwood, if you're receiving this, Earth's orbital defense grid just detected multiple unauthorized ships entering the atmosphere. Whatever your prisoner knows, it's brought a war to our doorstep. Lyra's skin pulsed with patterns that Nova was beginning to recognize as anxiety. We need to reach your ship. I can prove everything, but we'll need access to the Concordat secure networks. The stellar wind is on lockdown, Nova reminded her. Every security force on Earth will be looking for us. A ghost of a smile played across Lyra's luminescent features. Good thing I spent the last week studying Earth security protocols while pretending to be a model prisoner. Nova stared at her. You really never planned to serve out your exile quietly, did you? Would you, if you knew what I know? Lyra's expression grew serious. The Concordat isn't just manipulating developing worlds, Nova. They're engineering their collapse. Earth is next on their list. A distant clang echoed through the tunnels, followed by the distinctive whine of phase disruptors powering up. Nova made her decision. There's a maintenance shaft that leads directly to the spaceport sublevel. But if you're playing me, I'm not. Lyra's hand found Nova's arm, her touch sending an unexpected warmth through the human's sleeve. My people value truth above all else. It's why the Concordat fears us. We can't be bought or threatened into silence. They moved swiftly through the tunnels, emerging into the spaceport's cargo area just as alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Through the massive windows, they could see ships descending through the clouds, sleek, predatory vessels that definitely weren't part of Earth's defense fleet. Shadowclaw dropships, Lyra identified them. They're not here just for me anymore. This is a full containment operation. Nova led them through a series of security checkpoints, her override codes still functioning despite the chaos. The stellar wind sat on its pad, a familiar sight amidst the growing madness. As they approached, Nova noticed something odd about the ship's external readings. Someone's already aboard, she whispered, drawing her pulse pistol. Lyra's skin dimmed to nearly black, a defensive reaction Nova hadn't seen before. Wait. Those energy signatures. I know them. The ship's ramp lowered with a soft hiss, revealing a tall figure that made Nova's jaw drop. Admiral Jensen, Earth's highest-ranking officer in the Concordat liaison office, stood in the doorway. Inside, quickly, he ordered. We don't have much time. Nova kept her weapon raised. Sir, with all due respect, what are you doing on my ship? Jensen's weathered face was grim. Choosing a side, Officer Blackwood. Miss Starweaver isn't the only one who's been gathering evidence against the Concordat. Some of us have been waiting for the right moment, and the right allies, to act. Lyra stepped forward, her skin brightening with recognition. You're part of the Starlight Protocol. The hidden resistance within the Concordat itself. And you, my dear, just became our best chance at exposing everything. Jensen gestured urgently to the ship. But we need to move now. The Shadowclaw teams aren't just here to silence you, they're here to initiate Earth's crisis point. Nova's blood ran cold. What kind of crisis? The kind that would leave Earth dependent on Concordat intervention, Lyra explained, her voice tight with anger. Just like dozens of worlds before us. As they boarded the ship, alarms screaming across the spaceport, Nova felt the ground shift beneath her feet, literally. In the distance, the Seattle skyline began to waver as if in a heat mirage. Gravity destabilizers, Jensen announced grimly. They're starting the show early. Nova ran for the cockpit, her training warring with her racing thoughts. In the span of a day, she'd gone from jailer to fugitive, and Earth's relationship with the galaxy had been revealed as an elaborate trap. But as she caught Lyra's reflection in the viewport, saw the determination in those iridescent eyes, she felt something else too, hope. If we survive this, Nova said as she fired up the engines, you're going to teach me everything about those truth-telling habits of your people. Lyra's answering smile was like starlight breaking through clouds. When we survive this, Nova, I'll teach you everything I know. The stellar wind lifted off as chaos erupted across Seattle, carrying its unlikely crew toward a confrontation that would either save Earth or seal its fate. And somewhere in the midst of it all, a bond was forming that neither human nor Australian had expected, one that might just change the galaxy itself. The stellar wind cut through Earth's upper atmosphere, pursued by 3 Shadowclaw vessels. In the cockpit, Nova's hands flew across the controls while Lyra worked furiously at the communications array. Admiral Jensen stood behind them, coordinating with his hidden network of resistance members. The gravity disruption has spread to major cities across Earth, Jensen reported grimly. Paris, Tokyo, New Delhi, all experiencing localized gravitational anomalies. The Concordat's rescue fleet is already positioning itself as humanity's savior. Nova executed a sharp maneuver, diving between 2 orbital platforms. We need proof that they engineered this crisis. Something concrete enough to convince the other member worlds. Here, Lyra's skin pulsed with excitement as her fingers danced across the holographic display. I'm accessing the Concordat secure network through Jensen's credentials. The encryption is, wait. Her iridescent eyes widened. This isn't possible. What is it? Nova spared a glance from her piloting. These authorization codes, they're coming from First Speaker Thorne's personal database. The entire Concordat Council isn't just aware of these operations, they're actively coordinating them. The corruption goes straight to the top. A blast from their pursuers rocked the ship. Nova gritted her teeth as she initiated emergency protocols. We need somewhere to transmit this data. Somewhere they can't shut down or discredit. The Australian embassy on Luna, Lyra suggested. My people maintain independent quantum channels that even the Concordat can't block. If we can reach it. Jensen shook his head. Luna's in lockdown. Every approach vector will be heavily guarded. Then we make our own vector, Nova declared, her eyes fixed on a seemingly empty section of space. Admiral, does your clearance extend to Project Mirrorgate? Jensen's weathered face broke into a surprised smile. The experimental quantum tunneling platform. It was decommissioned months ago. Officially, Nova corrected. Unofficially, Earth kept it running as a contingency. And I know exactly where it is. Lyra looked between them, her skin shifting through patterns of curiosity and concern. What's Project Mirrorgate? Humanity's secret weapon, Nova explained, already adjusting their course. A quantum tunneling device that can create temporary wormholes. Small ones, but big enough for a ship our size. The Concordat banned the research, claimed it was too dangerous. Now we know why, Jensen added. Can't have developing worlds creating technology that might help them escape control. Another blast rattled the ship. Warning lights flashed across the console as Nova pushed the engines to their limit. The platform is hidden in a debris field near Luna's dark side. If we can reach it, we can bypass their blockade entirely, Lyra finished, her expression brightening. Nova, that's brilliant. Nova felt an unexpected warmth at the praise, but forced herself to focus. First we have to get there. And we're not the only ones who know about it. She nodded toward the tactical display, where more Shadowclaw ships were converging on their position. I can help with that, Lyra said, her hands moving to a different console. My people have certain abilities that the Concordat doesn't fully understand. We can manipulate light and energy in ways that... Suddenly, Lyra's skin blazed with brilliant light. The pursuing ship sensors immediately went haywire, their targeting systems confused by false readings. Nova seized the opportunity, diving the stellar wind into a field of space debris. That was incredible, Nova breathed. Why didn't you use that ability before? Because it leaves traces that are easily tracked, Lyra explained, her glow dimming. I've just announced to every Concordat ship in the system that there's an Australian aboard. Jensen's comm unit crackled with encrypted messages. Multiple vessels breaking orbit from Luna. They know where we're headed. Nova's jaw set with determination. Then we better get there first. She turned to Lyra, allowing herself a brief moment of vulnerability. I need you to trust me for what comes next. It's going to get rough. Lyra's hand found Nova's shoulder, her touch sending that now familiar warmth through the human's body. I've trusted you since you chose to believe me in that panic room. That hasn't changed. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, something that transcended species and duty and all the barriers that should have kept them apart. Then the moment broke as proximity alarms screamed to life. Multiple impacts incoming. Jensen warned. Nova's hands tightened on the controls. Hold on to something. We're about to show the Concordat why they should have let humans keep developing their technology. The stellar wind plunged deeper into the debris field, threading through ancient satellite remains and discarded rocket segments. Somewhere ahead lay humanity's greatest scientific achievement, and their best hope for exposing the truth. But with enemy ships closing in and time running out, reaching it would take more than just skill. It would take trust. Trust in each other, trust in their cause, and trust that the bond forming between a human officer and an alien exile was strong enough to change the course of galactic history. As Nova prepared for the most dangerous maneuver of her career, she found herself hoping that trust would be enough. The quantum tunneling platform hung in space like a forgotten dream, its crystalline structures absorbing and reflecting the distant starlight. As the stellar wind approached, Nova could hardly believe they'd made it this far. Behind them, the debris field sparkled with weapons fire as their pursuers struggled to navigate the treacherous path they'd blazed. Platforms powering up, Jensen announced from the engineering station. But we've got maybe 5 minutes before those ships break through. Lyra's hands danced across the quantum interface, her natural bioluminescence synchronizing with the platform's crystals. The Australian Embassy's quantum channels are ready. Once we make the jump, we'll have seconds to transmit everything. Nova watched the tactical display with growing concern. We've got another problem. Those aren't just Shadowclaw ships anymore. She pointed to new signatures emerging from Luna. The entire Concordat defense fleet is mobilizing. Of course they are, Jensen said grimly. We're about to expose centuries of manipulation. They'll destroy this entire sector before they let that happen. The ship shuddered as the first debris field stragglers got into weapons range. Nova's hands tightened on the controls. Lyra, how much longer? Almost there. The crystals are aligning with, she stopped suddenly, her skin pulsing with alarm patterns. No. No, no, no. What's wrong? Nova demanded. New signal coming through the quantum channels. The Concordat, they're not just attacking Earth. They've launched simultaneous operations against every world that showed signs of supporting the resistance. My homeworld, the Centaurian colonies, the Rigel Collective, they're burning everything. Nova's blood ran cold. The Concordat wasn't just trying to maintain control, they were initiating a galaxy-wide purge. Humanity's resistance had triggered exactly what Lyra had tried to prevent: catastrophic retaliation against developing worlds. "We have to stop this," Nova whispered. Then, louder, "We have to stop this." Jensen looked up from his station. "The quantum tunnel is ready, but there might be another way. A better way." Lyra's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "The platform itself. It's not just a transportation device, is it?" "No," Jensen confirmed. "It's also the most powerful quantum transmitter ever created. If we reconfigure it, we could broadcast the truth to every quantum-capable world simultaneously," Lyra finished. "But the power requirements would overload the platform," Nova realized. "Destroying our only escape route." A hit rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across every console as the Concordat fleet drew closer. They had seconds to decide. Lyra's hand found Nova's, their fingers intertwining. "My people have a saying, truth shines brightest in darkness." Nova met those iridescent eyes, seeing in them the same determination she felt in her own heart. "Admiral." Jensen was already working the controls. "Reconfiguring platform power systems. Miss Starweaver, prepare the data burst. Nova, get us in position." The stellar wind glided into the heart of the platform's crystalline structure. Around them, the quantum field began to build, reality itself seeming to bend and twist. On the tactical display, the Concordat fleet formed a firing line. "Data ready," Lyra announced, her skin glowing with intense patterns. "But someone needs to stay at the transmitter controls. The feedback, it won't be survivable." "I'll do it," Jensen stepped forward, but Nova raised a hand. "No. You're needed to coordinate the resistance after this." "We'll do it together," Lyra interrupted, squeezing Nova's hand. "My people can withstand quantum feedback longer than humans. And you're the only one who can pilot us clear before the platform overloads." Nova wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. The Concordat fleet opened fire, their combined barrage lighting up space like a new sun. The platform's shields wouldn't hold for long. 20 seconds to full power, Jensen reported. Nova pulled Lyra close, no longer caring about protocols or species differences. "This isn't how I imagined our story ending." Lyra's smile was radiant. "Who says it's ending? Truth endures, Nova. And so do the bonds it creates." They came together in a kiss that defied physics, biology, and every regulation in both their worlds. Then Lyra was gone, racing to the transmission controls as Nova threw the ship into its final approach. "Platform at full power," Jensen shouted. "Transmitting, now." The quantum burst rippled outward, carrying with it every piece of evidence they'd gathered. The platform's crystals blazed with impossible light as Lyra channeled her own energy into the transmission, amplifying it beyond its designed limits. Through their still active link, Nova felt echoes of the feedback beginning to overwhelm her companion system. 3 seconds to overload, Jensen counted down. 2. Nova's hands flew across the controls, preparing for the split-second timing they'd need to survive. 1. Lyra's consciousness brushed against hers one last time, carrying a wave of emotions too complex for words. The platform exploded. The stellar wind shot through the quantum chaos like a bullet through shattered glass, systems screaming as reality reasserted itself. Behind them, the explosion caught half the Concordat fleet in its quantum backwash, their ships twisted into impossible shapes by the disrupted spacetime. Nova was moving before the ship fully stabilized, racing to the transmission room. She found Lyra collapsed beside the smoking controls, her silver skin dark and lifeless. For one horrible moment, she thought. Then a faint pulse of light rippled across the Australian's form. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, finding Nova's with a weak smile. Did it work? Jensen's voice came through the comms, filled with wonder. It worked. Reports coming in from across the galaxy. Every quantum-capable world received the transmission. The Concordat, their own people are turning against them. The truth is out. Nova gathered Lyra into her arms, holding her close as the ship's medical systems began their work. You nearly died. Worth it, Lyra whispered. For the truth. For us. For us, Nova agreed, finally allowing herself to believe in a future neither of them had imagined possible. 3 months later, Nova stood beside Lyra in the newly formed Galactic Assembly, watching representatives from 100 worlds, including a reformed Concordat, sign the Treaty of Universal Rights. Earth, along with other developing worlds, would finally take its place as a true equal in galactic society. Ready to make history? Lyra asked, her now-recovered skin shimmering with joy patterns. Nova took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt now. With you? Always. Together, they stepped forward to tell their story, not just of conspiracy and corruption exposed, but of trust forged in crisis, of love transcending species, and of truth's power to light the darkest corners of the galaxy. Some called it a revolution. Others, a revelation. But for Nova and Lyra, it was simply the beginning of their next great adventure together, among the stars they'd helped set free.